I found a round metal object with no visible opening on top, but it looks like there used to be a lever or handle for turning it. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is most likely a vintage chalk line tool, dating back to around the 1950s. These tools were widely used in construction and carpentry to mark perfectly straight lines across surfaces like wood, drywall, or concrete. The round metal body held a spool of string coated with chalk, and the lever you noticed was used to reel the line back in after each use. To operate it, you'd pull out the string, stretch it tightly between 2 points, and then snap it against the surface. The chalk-coated line would leave a clean, straight mark, ideal for guiding cuts, aligning materials, or marking reference points. I found this lightweight item made of aluminum and glass at a thrift store, but even the shop owner didn't know what it was. It feels delicate and a bit unusual. Does anyone recognize it? This item is an ultraviolet light bulb from a vintage Sperti sun lamp, specifically the P163 model. These devices were popular in the mid-20th century and were used for light therapy, particularly to treat vitamin D deficiency. Back then, doctors and scientists had begun to understand how ultraviolet light helped the body synthesize vitamin D, especially in people with limited sun exposure. Sperti was a leading company in this field, and their sun lamps became a common fixture in homes and clinics during the 1930s and 1940s. The full set typically included the ultraviolet lamp, protective goggles, a stand, and a manual with health guidelines. While they were marketed as health-boosting devices, they were also early predecessors to modern tanning lamps. I came across this item while in the Netherlands. It has a handle attached to a wooden cylinder which is split inside by an internal divider. There are holes on both the top and bottom, and the whole piece stands roughly 6 inches tall. What could it have been used for? What you found is a vintage cigarette dispenser, most likely made in Europe between the 1960s and 1980s. These small mechanical devices were designed to add a bit of flair to what was once a very common social ritual, offering a cigarette to a guest. You'd load the cylinder with cigarettes, and when the handle was pressed and released, one cigarette would be lifted into a tray at the top, ready to be picked up. At a time when smoking was widespread and cigarettes cost just a few cents per pack, it was considered polite to keep cigarettes easily accessible for visitors. Many people displayed them in decorative holders, ranging from sleek silver cases to playful wooden gadgets like this one. I found an antique tool that looks a bit like a fork. It has sharp prongs and measures about 9 inches in length and 2.5 inches across the head. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is a vintage ice chipper, specifically a Gilchrist No. 50 model designed in the early 1900s. Back then, before electric refrigerators, ice was delivered in large blocks and stored in home ice boxes or used in bars and restaurants. Tools like this were essential for breaking down those blocks into smaller, more manageable pieces. The sharp prongs were used to chip and crack ice, and the sturdy handle gave the user enough leverage to work through thick, frozen chunks. Bartenders especially relied on tools like this to shape ice for cocktails, long before modern ice machines existed. Interestingly, the design has stood the test of time. Contemporary companies like Acopa still produce ice chippers in a nearly identical form, proving how practical and reliable the original concept remains even today. I found an object that looks like a clock or timing device, but it seems to be missing some internal parts. There's a window below the clock face, but there are no letters or numbers anywhere on it. It measures about 5 inches across the front and 2 inches deep. Any idea what it might have been used for? What you found is a night watchman's clock, a piece of early security technology used from the late 19th through the mid-20th century. These devices were carried by security guards on their rounds to provide proof that they had checked in at designated locations throughout a facility. Inside the clock was a long paper tape connected to the mechanism, which advanced over time. At each checkpoint, the guard would find a special key, typically chained to the wall, insert it into the clock, and turn it. This action would stamp the tape with a code and timestamp, recording exactly when and where the guard had been. Night watchmen's clocks were widely used in factories, warehouses, and institutional buildings before being phased out by electronic systems. I came across this item years ago in the basement of an old house. At first glance, it looks like a regular coin, but it's actually hollow and opens up. When I was a kid, I used to stash small coins inside, or use it to pass secret notes to friends. Does anyone know what it really is? What you found is a coin lighter, styled to resemble a 19th century French coin. These types of items were especially popular in the 1950s and 60s, when quirky gadgets were in vogue. Originally, it would have contained the internal components of a lighter, though it looks like those pieces are now missing. I came across a scissor-shaped tool that has a spoon on one end and a ring on the other. It looks quite old, and there's an inscription on the underside of the spoon that reads, "Patent August 27th, 1901. Any idea what this item might have been used for? What you found is a pineapple eye snip, patented in 1901 by John Pack. This scissor-like tool was specifically designed to remove the tough, inedible eyes from a pineapple, those small, thorny circles left behind after the skin is peeled, while preserving as much of the fruit as possible. At the time, pineapples were considered a luxury. They were so rare and expensive that people even rented them for parties as centerpieces. Despite the emergence of James Dole's industrial pineapple plantations in Hawaii by the early 20th century, along with major advances in canning and transportation, pineapples were still considered exotic and remained largely accessible only to the wealthy. I found a small rusty metal plate with the word "Stop." It measures about 3 by 2.5 inches and came from a box of vintage jewelry parts I picked up at a flea market. There are mounting holes on the bottom, but no markings or labels. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is a brake light frame from an antique car, most likely from a vintage Ford model produced between 1928 and 1929. The metal plate with the word "Stop" cut out was mounted over the single rear brake light, which would glow red when the driver hit the brakes. The cutout letters helped make the signal more visible, especially in low light conditions. In the early days of automobiles, cars only had one rear brake light, since traffic was lighter and speeds were much slower. What is this wooden object that's about 3 feet long and 1.5 feet tall, with a metal band wrapped around its middle? What you found is a former cone, a traditional tool once used in the process of hat making, specifically for shaping raw felt into the basic cone form used to create wool felt hats. In this process, the warm, pliable felt would be wrapped tightly around the wooden cone. The metal band around the middle served as a guide to cut the felt cleanly in half, creating 2 symmetrical pieces. These halves were then further shaped, blocked, and stiffened to become finished hats. The number on the cone likely refers to the size or style specification. While metal detecting in Germany, I found a 15-inch long object with a red painted bottom. It's not especially heavy, and I can't quite figure out what it is. What you found is likely a 4-pound incendiary bomb developed by Imperial Chemical Industries during World War II. These bombs were standard issue for the Royal Air Force's Bomber Command and were used extensively throughout the war. By 1944, over 36 million of them had been produced. The bomb's body was typically made from a lightweight aluminum-magnesium alloy, designed to ignite on impact and burn fiercely for up to 10 minutes. Inside, it was packed with thermite incendiary pellets, materials capable of generating extreme heat. I came across this old wooden handheld object with several metal prongs. It's pretty lightweight and was tucked away in a box of family heirlooms. I was told it's been passed down for at least 4 generations. Does anyone know what it might have been used for? This item is a vintage meat tenderizer, likely made in the mid-20th century by a Japanese company called Our Own Import. The multiple metal prongs were used to pierce the meat's surface, helping to break down tough muscle fibers and connective tissue. This not only made the meat easier to chew, but also allowed marinades to soak in more deeply and helped it cook more evenly. I found a pair of unusual old goggles at a thrift store. They're made of leather, metal, cloth, and velvet, and have a spring mechanism that keeps them either open or closed. The only marking says, "Patented Made in USA," but there's no patent number. The store owner didn't know what they were. They look like they could be several decades old. Any idea what they might have been used for? What you found is likely a Masonic hoodwink, a ceremonial blindfold used in Freemasonry rituals. Traditionally crafted from leather, cloth, velvet, and metal parts, the hoodwink is designed to cover the eyes during specific initiation ceremonies. The spring-loaded mechanism allows it to be quickly opened or closed as part of the ritual. In Freemasonry, the hoodwink symbolizes darkness or a lack of knowledge, which the initiate is expected to move beyond during their journey toward enlightenment and understanding. It plays an important symbolic role in marking the transition from ignorance to awareness, a core theme in Masonic teachings. I came across some early 20th century kitchen cabinet photos, and several of them have built-in funnel-shaped structures. They seem to be part of the cabinet itself. Does anyone know what these were used for? The cone-shaped attachments shown in the photo are part of a combined flour bin and sifter. To use it, you'd place a bowl underneath to catch the flour as it was sifted. This setup was a typical feature of what's known as a Hoosier cabinet, a freestanding kitchen unit that functioned as both storage and workspace. These cabinets became especially popular in the United States during the early 1900s, when most kitchens still lacked built-in cabinetry. One of the leading producers was the Hoosier Manufacturing Company based in Newcastle, Indiana. Their products became so widespread that the name Hoosier cabinet eventually became a generic term. By 1920, the company had sold more than 2 million of them. While going through some old fireplace tools in a house I recently purchased, I came across this item. It gives off a slight asphalt-like odor and has no maker's marks anywhere on it. The container's handle has a notch that seems designed to hang it on a nail. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is known as a Cape Cod fire starter, sometimes called a fire starter pot. These handy devices were once a common fixture near fireplaces and wood stoves, designed to make lighting a fire quick and effortless. Iron pot would typically be filled halfway with kerosene or lamp oil. A separate rod with a soapstone or porous ceramic head would be dipped into the fuel to soak it up. When you lit the stone with a match, it could burn for up to 10 minutes, giving you plenty of time to ignite the logs without needing kindling or newspaper. In the last video, I showed you a brass object and asked if anyone could guess what it was used for. This is a water meter key. This tool is used to turn the valve on a water meter or to open the meter box lid, giving access to control the flow of water. Now, I want to invite you to identify another mysterious object. What is this strange item with wheels, a pointed metal rod, and a hollow tube with a wing bolt? What do you think it's used for? Leave your guesses in the comments and I'll reveal the answer in the next video.